to do a presentation and review of the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Glad you're here. Thanks.
For having me. It's good to be back face to face, actually. Absolutely. But not to digress. So I previously met with both Mayor and Ryan a few weeks ago. We went through the audit report, went through the financial statements in detail. So what I'm going to do tonight is go through the executive summary. This is the report that we normally prepare for council. Should be a small bound document. Everybody receives it along with their reporting package. And what we're going to do is briefly go through this. And the first schedule I want us to look at together is going to be on page 2. So if everybody's got that, they'll flip over with me. All right, everybody's got it. Here we have the statement of net position, or probably more commonly known to everybody as a balance sheet. This is presented on a full accrual, full government-wide basis. That means we've combined all the funds for presentation purposes. And we'll see at December 31st, we had assets that consisted of unrestricted cash and investments of $855,000, restricted cash and investments of $353,000, small amount of receivables of $71,000, prepaid expenses of $12,000, capital assets net of accumulated depreciation of $1,420,000, for total assets of $2,713,000 at December 31st. We have liabilities that consist of accounts payable of $65,000, compensated absence or our vacation payable of $10,000, the A-tax bonds payable of $2,640,000, the note payable to Santee Cooper for the underground overage cost of $255,000, for total liabilities of $2,971,000. Now, this was an odd year for the town. This is the first year that our total liabilities exceeded our total assets. So we ended up with a net deficit for the year of $158,000 overall. Now, I think it's important for us to talk about this a little bit from the standpoint that this deficit was both planned for as well as expected as the beach renourishment project closed out. And really what the potential deficit ended up being was always going to be a result of how much of the town's resources actually had to be used towards the beach renourishment project. But we did end the deficit at the end the year with a deficit of $258,000. Now, if we turn over to page 3, we have the statement of activities. This is also equivalent to the statement.
Stacy, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
We move on. All right, that's very helpful. If I look at the 19 report like this, what would it show? What would the differences be? So for example, what was our total net position at the end of 2019?
Okay, I think we probably, if we look back, well, we actually have to look at all our report. When we get to the back, we get to the fund financial statements. They're actually the next figure probably has it on there. I think our net position at the end of 2019 was positive $5,773,000. I think we'll see it on the next page on this statement. All right, so once again here, this is statement of activities. Once again, full accrual. You'll see we had general revenues that consisted of state and local aid taxes of $822,000, franchise fees $66,000, state shared revenues $357,000, unrestricted interest of $5,000, and then other miscellaneous revenues of $12,000 for total general revenues of $1,263,000 for the year. We had what's categorized as our program revenues. We got charges for services of $54,000, our operating grants and contributions of $2,986,000 for total programmatic revenues $3,040,000. We had our expenses for our governmental activities, which were $10,335,000, and that left us with a change in net position or a net loss of the year of $6,031,000. And that is also directly related to the final expenditures to finish up the beach renourishment project. And then here's where you'll see the net position. Started out with a positive basis on the full accrual of $5,773,000, and then once again we ended the year with that deficit of $258,000. Now, if we turn over to page 4, we got a schedule, and this is going to be a schedule on the revenues and expenditures of the governmental funds. And this statement's gonna be based on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is, it differs from full accrual. And that this is more of a focus on cash inflows and cash outflows. And so you'll see for 2020, we had accommodations taxes of 822,000, our franchise fees of 66,000, police fines of 24,000, intergovernmental revenues of 357,000, interest income of 39,000, special events revenues of 31,000, under donations for the underground wire project of 38,000, donations for town hall construction. These were still pledges we were collecting out from a few years ago, $5,000. The donations from the property owners for the sand fence project, 21,000. Other miscellaneous donations, 8,200. Grants, which were primarily the remaining funds from PRT for beach renourishment, 2,927,000. And then miscellaneous revenues, 11,000 for total governmental funds revenues of 4,354,000 for the year. Then we get down to our expenditures. So we had administration, 311,000, law enforcement, 460,000, judicial services, 8,700, public works, 51,000, building, 24,000, tourism and promotion, 90,000. Here you can see the big amount for the beach renourishment projects, 8,980,000. Small amount of capital outlay of 4,000, and then our debt service expenditures. This is debt service on the ATAX bonds, as well as a debt service on the CNT Cooper note of 254,000, which gave us total expenditures for the year of 10,186,000. Small amount of insurance proceeds were collected, $10,000, and then that left us with our net change in fund balances or net loss from a fund perspective, $5,841,000. Once again, all related to beach renourishment. We started the year with our combined beginning fund balances of $7,059,000, and then ended the year positively with combined fund balances of $1,230,000. And then finally, on the last page, we've got a couple of graphs for you. Graph at the top is just really a comparison of revenues and expenditures over the last 5 years. And then the graph at the bottom will actually show a comparison of the fund balances. And here you can actually see how between 2019 and 2020, that beach renourishment fund balance actually decreased so much as the project was actually closed out. So that's the big difference on the graph there between all the years. And then on a positive note, to end things positively, general fund, you can see actually stayed relatively constant over the last 5 years. And the town ended the year, I think it was a little over 800,000, maybe close to $900,000 worth of unrestricted fund balance in the general fund, which basically equals about 90% or 11 months worth of total annual expenditures of the town. Most governments strive to have 30, 60, or 90 days on hand. So the town is in really good shape with their fund balance at year end in the general fund. So that was it. That was our short little presentation. If anyone has any other detailed questions about anything, or if you want to go over anything in the audit report, I'll be glad to do so or answer any questions you might have.
It's interesting to note that accommodation taxes overall were basically the exact same as 2019.
Yeah.
Even though we had COVID and we had to shut down the short-term rentals for a period of time. Yes, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Shows we had an overall good year.
It is. And we even though we've got that net deficit on a full accrual basis from a fund standpoint, beach renourishment fund still ended the year with like $300,000 in fund balance. So we'll just keep building on those reserves. Next couple of years, we'll probably collect $500,000 in local ATAX each year. And really, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we really should have to be paying the debt back on the ATAX bonds. Mm-hmm. So we should be able to build up probably $200,000 to $300,000 in that fund over the next couple of years. So I really expect that deficit on the full accrual basis. I think it'll recover, if not this coming year, probably the next year.
Good. So you're saying that you think that balance builds up to 200,000 or 300,000 annually, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so if you look, so if we look at the actual audit report itself, we look at, page 16 is probably the best page. So if we look at page 16, the third column over is just specifically the beach renourishment fund. So you can see each year, we're collecting about $550,000 worth of accommodations taxes each year. So that'll hold relatively constant and not go up. And then really the only thing we've got to fund is the debt service on the bonds, which is, that's for about $250,000 a year. So other than that, unless we do any special projects or, you know, there's a hurricane, some unforeseen circumstances, we should be able to build up the difference annually and try to build up some reserves.
And that's that number in the third column down at the bottom, 55,
Third column at the top.
Fund balance is.
the balance
Yeah.
at the, down at the
Yeah,
bottom.
all the way down at the bottom, the very end, that is the fund balance, $355,000. That is the fund balance that is still left in the beach renourishment fund.
And that's basically like a pro forma is what you're looking at. This is from 2020. isn't it?
This is 2020. This is actual audited 2020 financial statements.
Okay.
These are actual numbers. So we would expect we build up, you know, to $200,000 each year in that beach renourishment. And then you can see on the same schedule, general fund, the very first column, our ending fund balance, general fund, $881,000 at year end. So just excluding, excluding the debt service payment on the ATAX bonds, which is going to come strictly from beach renourishment. The other general operating expenditures, you've got a good, healthy fund balance on hand in general fund to cover close to 1 year's operating expenses.
What other questions? That's for Stacy.
None for me. Good job.
Well, I know,
Thank you.
I was going to second that, so good job. And I know the 2019 audit was, that's what I wanted to hear. And I appreciate y'all doing that because based on our meeting 5 or 6 weeks ago, I see there's a tremendous amount of work and diligence that goes into it. So I appreciate you guys making it useful again.
You know, whenever Diane leaving, I think Ryan got a flash course on stuff. Diane will have to do for us. So,
You double duty.
So it's a good bit of work, but yeah, I think everything turned out well overall. You know, the fact that we really only ended up with a deficit full pool of $200,000 in the bigger scheme of things wasn't bad at all.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Other questions, any other time, just give me a call.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with everything.
Yeah.
And David. All right, next up, we have the police report, item 4B. How you doing, chief?
Well, yourself?
Doing well and survived the weekend.
Great.
It's awesome. Loved it.
Yeah,
Every second of it.
it seems like everybody's really excited for it this year.
Loved it.
June is obviously the first month of the summer and comes with the summer problems. People in the creek, auto break-ins, tons of tickets, lots of traffic out there. And we had a handful of thefts, including unfortunately, we've been checking the life rings from that Eagle Scout project that happened last year, and somebody had stolen 3 of the life rings from our life-saving stations that we had to replace. We don't know exactly when they were taken, but we've stepped up we're checking them more regularly now. Because last thing we want is somebody to be drowning, so we don't have to find a life-saving ring and not be one. So we just got the shipment in from the company the other day, and unfortunately, those things cost about $150 a piece. So we had to replace those. The car break-ins, one of the cars actually had a gun stolen. They had an unlocked car and left their gun inside. And obviously, that prevents an issue for a resident who might interrupt somebody's car from getting broken into. One of the officers trying to arrest somebody that has, now they have a weapon, when it could be just, as simple as getting somebody for larceny. Now we're encountering somebody who's armed with a gun. So, we just always try to recommend people lock their cars and even don't leave their guns in their vehicles when it's unattended, especially on vacation. If you look at the traffic numbers that we ran, surprisingly, from the year to date, from June of last year to this year, we're actually seeing almost 10% less vehicles on the island than we did last year. But for the month of June of 2020 to 2021, it was up 2.5%. And I just ran the numbers for the first week of July. We were up 1.4%, so we're about steady for what we were last year. Seems like a lot more people in my mind, in my estimation, but according to the actual numbers we gathered, it's about the same as it was last year for the month. So
I know that we walked out on the beach on July 4th, and I don't ever remember that many people.
tense is largely see, right?
It was incredible.
It was. I walked out on the pier. I looked north and south, and that's all you saw was, and by late afternoon, the tide come in and push people up a little bit closer, but it was back for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Chief, what's the nature of the golf cart violations that you mentioned?
I think most of them were for operating at night,
Sorry.
operating after dark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think one might have been letting a minor operate a golf cart, 12-year-old or something operate a golf cart.
Okay.
But most of those were for nighttime violations.
You're not running into very many people that are trying to sneak on without a sticker?
We don't generally issue a ticket for them, at least on first offense. If we get someone who's done it multiple times, we would. But, Ryan can tell you, we've already had to order 2 additional sticker, decal orders. I think we're up to close to 600 golf carts registered on the island.
Wow.
I never would have guessed that.
That's a record by far, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think the first year we had like 300, and we've doubled that now this year. The amount of people moving here, all the new developments in the area.
Do you know, like the machine that does the count, can it distinguish between a car and a golf cart?
No, just vehicle. It can only read an actual vehicle tag number. So if it's a motorcycle, we can't read that. And sometimes if the reflectivity on the tag is worn down, or if there's an obstruction of the tag, it won't actually read those. So those numbers in actuality would be higher, but I'm guessing that there'll be relativity in the amount, the percentage would probably be about the same.
Yeah. Well, remind me of the rules. Are they, as far as the golf cart?
So you can, the state law states that you can operate a golf cart within 4 miles of where your golf cart is registered. The town has the ability to limit it to 2 miles, which when we instituted the golf cart regulations, that's what it is. So you can register your golf cart within 2 miles, and from the way the state law, the way the town and the state law is written, it's 2 miles until the golf cart is registered. So rather than, if we don't differentiate whether or not north end and south end. So technically, somebody who lives on the north end of the island shouldn't be able to operate a golf cart past 2 miles, as they wouldn't technically be able to operate in the south end, but we don't differentiate on the island itself. We just do it from 2 miles from the causeway. So if somebody in Rice Fields wants to register their golf cart, they can do that, but it starts to, the limit goes like to the beginning of Litchfield and like the outskirts of Hagley, starts to get to that 2 mile limit from the causeways.
Rice Fields isn't more than 2 miles away?
So the state law states that a community, if you're in a community, it's from the beginning of the community. So those roads aren't state roads. So say like Heritage or Rice Fields, it's from the actual entrance to the community.
To the nearest point.
Like a gated, if you have a gated community or people who have gated type of thing. Then, so you can't operate more than 2 miles. You can't operate it after dark. Person driving it has to have a driver's license. It has to be over 16. Has to have insurance. It has to be registered with the state as well.
So even if they have lights on the golf cart, not at night?
No.
Okay,
So
I didn't know.
there is such a thing as a low-speed vehicle, and that is a kind of a golf cart on steroids. It has seatbelts, it has mirrors, it has lights. And the town's ordinances state that they don't allow even though they're safer, we don't allow them on the island. I don't, that'd be up to you to change the law if you wanted to, but, that would, and they actually have tags on the back of their cars, they're little low-speed vehicle tags.
Any other questions for Mike? I just, before you are seated, I wanted to say that I was looking at the Coastal Observer, I was catching up on my reading earlier today, and I saw a editorial from a resident, Paul Saylor, and he basically said, because he lives right there on the north end where a lot of the tents and people congregate and concentrate. He said that the police and the monitoring and control of everyone was as best he's ever seen it. Number one, and number two, he said the cleanup was as quick and as efficient as he's ever seen it. So kudos to you guys for what you did, and
We don't do a
also,
lot of the cleanup, that's,
I know that, I know that.
Kudos on them.
Yeah.
We did write a couple of tickets that night, 4th of July for fireworks.
Yeah.
I know we had an officer on the four-wheeler at night, and he was chasing down different complaints, and if he saw violations, he would go down there and tell them how to back it up. And, normally we have a fight or two on 4th of July. We didn't have any this year, so everybody seemed to be in good spirits, and we're happy for that.
Well, the residents on the north end have to, I mean, and south end too, obviously, but they tolerate a lot. And for him to say that as a resident means that you guys
I don't
stepped it
know
up,
if
did a
you're
good
aware of it or
job.
not, but we, 2-3 years ago, we purchased a tent, and we set up a tent down there. And we put the police officers too, underneath the tent. We rotate them out throughout the day, and they kind of walk around and make sure everybody's, behaving themselves. And, not just behaving themselves, we like to interact with the, the people out there, and they're very good to, come to us too, so.
Sounds like it worked.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Good deal. Thanks, man. All right, item 4C, building report. A copy of that is in your packets. Anything extraordinary there? Hearing no questions, let's move on to item 4D, the financial report.
So you have the monthly financials in front of you. Again, I put kind of a summary sheet, shows you where the fund balances are. And you'll see local aid tax actually, we collected about $184,000 thus far. That's $85,000 more than this time last year. Even if it were to remain the same from here on out, at $85,000 more, you're looking at local aid tax collections for $600,000 this year. So that is incorrect. Otherwise, everything else is in line with the budget. Expenditure wise, no red flag.
On the 6 month ending June 30th, the combined income statement, that last column, current year budget, that's the full year
Yeah, so
budget.
what we've had for, this is the first month that changed it in almost 9 years. We used to have current, used to be same categories, but for budget, we have budget year to date. Never made any sense. It's very hard for you guys to gauge, because that's a very subjective number. We have things that are front loaded, we pay the whole thing at the beginning of the year, or some that are evenly distributed monthly over the course of the year, some that are end of the year, some that are in the middle of the year. So it's hard to, this is a guesstimate as to what it should be at this point in the year. So the best way to do it is just put the full budget amount so you can see for yourself. This is how much we spent, this is the budget for the year, so typically through June 30th, should be around 50%, with the exception of, like I said, things that are front loaded, or there are some items that we don't pay to the end of the year, so it would be almost zero.
Yeah.
But it's easier for you to make heads or tails of what it is.
Got it. Because you could look at ATAX and year to date at 138 and the full year budget 525. That's just through May. I mean, that's your point.
We also, I'd say we take in about 90% of the revenue in a 3-month span.
Exactly.
So you'll see, like with this June 30, this is actually from May. So you'll see the next 3 months, that is the majority of our ATAX funds will come in the next
Through July, August. Okay. Good deal. I was looking through that and that confused me, but I figured that. Just wanted to clarify. What other questions you guys have on the financial report? All right, we have item 4D, number 1, approved payment to Belzer and Belzer PA for $5,456.74. Copy of that invoice is in your packets.
This is current as of when?
Well, this is through last month, so the whole year we're at about $42,000 for spent with them. budget amendment is coming up, because that's something we didn't really budget. We didn't know what it would be, because we had to amend it. Yeah. All the invoices that were for you monthly, so.
All right, we needed a motion to approve the payment to Belzer and Belzer unless there's any questions about it. So moved. We have a motion second to approve the payment to Belzer and Belzer for $5,456.74. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, moving on to item 5B, we have 5A, which is appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. As most of you know, Ken Leach has moved from the Planning Commission to become the chairperson for the ARB, so that leaves a vacancy. His term expired in February. I've reached out to the Planning Commission for recommendations on nominees. I got one, but that person's already on a committee, chair of another committee. I haven't had any other nominations. So I know we can operate as a 6-member planning commission. Would prefer that it be an odd number of 7. I think unless there's any other nominations, we probably should try to get one between now and the August meeting, unless you guys have someone to nominate.
I have some people in mind, but I'd like to speak with them first. So
Okay.
if we can push this to the next meeting, that might be good.
That'll work for y'all? All right. We'll table that item to the August meeting. Let's move on to item 5B, Planning Commission update regarding historical preservation ordinance. You want that one? Or you want me to talk about
Yeah,
it?
so planning commission met last week, and on the agenda was ordinance covering historic preservation of structures or homes that exist on the island, and also a tree ordinance. I included, we get their packets, so they came up with an ordinance and emailed it, they wanted it on they requested that you guys had it on the agenda for tonight. And after discussing with Brian, determined that it's just way too early to have something that quick put before you guys, but it is in your packets for you to review. It's what they're aiming, you can get a good idea of what they're aiming at accomplishing. But really, it's on there just for discussion purposes. I don't know if you're at a point where you want to discuss it and provide feedback, or if it's something you'd rather digest and then get back to them at a later date. And it's,
The essence of what they were advocating is there are 9 historic homes on the island. And they were advocating that we put some form of protection on those houses so they can't be torn down or subdivided or anything else. And so while there are merits to what they're proposing, it's fresh as of last week, and it's also fresh off of ARB that we just passed last month. So, and also importantly, we need to take the time to get feedback from those property owners for those 9 historic homes to make sure that they understand why we're doing it, what we want to do. And that's even of interest to them because we represent not only the island, but them as well. So we just have more due diligence to do. I certainly respect and appreciate what the Planning Commission is trying to accomplish. And I think we may get to some level of that, but we just need to do more homework. And we also need to educate everyone the same way we did with the ARB process. That took over a year. It's a big deal, I think, affecting, because these historic homes, as of right now, they have a historical designation, but they aren't protected, as I understand it. I mean, they can be torn down, subdivided, and everything else. So I believe there's merit, and maybe you guys feel differently, but I just want to discuss it briefly so we can kind of set the stage for where we're going to go and see how you guys feel about it.
I mean, I like the idea of taking a deep breath and trying to figure it out.
Right, me too.
Me too.
Okay, well, the ordinance is in there. There's a list of the homes that are obviously that are under consideration. And the Planning Commission, I'm sure will meet more on that and keep us posted. So good for y'all. All right, item 5C, resolution 2021-02, resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Pawleys Island amending the architectural design guidelines. as you guys know, we adopted those design guidelines last month. There was a particular item within those design guidelines that required the property owner to hire an architect to design the home. There are obviously some builders that are design builders that don't use architects. So after we discussed it back and forth, and there's actually a scenario where someone does have a design builder not using an architect, that, you know, this particular homeowner wants to design a home that fits the ARB. They want it to work. And so we thought we would at least say, prefer that you use an architect as opposed to required. Once again, that's softening it somewhat and being as flexible as we can. So
Is it the word prefer or recommend?
I can't remember.
So
Brian?
in your package, should be the last page, actually. So we have what the original design guideline states, and it says recommendation made by the ARB, and then the planning commission was exactly the same, just worded a little differently. So those are in there, you can see how they worded it, but it was recommends. And the way that the planning commission worded it was requires, but either an architect requires an architect and or an engineer. So you kind of muddies it up because you're going to need an engineer regardless of, you know, the engineer is required no matter what you do. So you can have an architect in addition to the engineer, or you could just not use an architect. So essentially they're just saying that it's an option.
But Georgetown,
Because the engineer is absolutely required. Can't build a house.
Georgetown County won't accept plans unless they're
Yeah,
engineered,
you need a
correct?
structural engineer
Yeah.
to stamp and certify plans.
Okay.
Architect that's more of an aesthetic. You want to design, you want it to look a certain way, so you hire an architect.
So how does that-
Architect is not required.
How does that sentence read one more time?
So it's the ARB recommendation was just change it instead of requires to recommends, and then the planning commission changes the phrasing to Pawleys Island Architectural Review Board requires that an architect and or engineer licensed in the state of South Carolina design and prepare construction documents for the residents to be built on the island.
Okay.
We're talking specifically about new home construction, not talking about a remodel or anything. Say that.
So it says, it just says the architectural review board requires that an architect and or engineer licensed in the state of South Carolina. So by saying and or, the engineer is required by law.
Design and prepare for residents to be built.
So the architect, it's either be, that's why I say it just muddies it up and makes it a little bit more confusing to people.
Particularly when you don't know what kind of engineer.
Why don't we put architect or design professional? That kind of opens it
I
up.
think
Like,
that's a better deal than
you know,
engineer.
like David Lane would be considered a design professional, I'm sure.
Yes, so he design builds, again, an engineer is going to stand by it, I mean,
Right.
he puts it together, but an engineer is going to go in there and actually put the design together.
Seems to be two issues to me. I mean, the architect, what we're talking about here is the look of the property.
Right.
We're not talking about whether it's structurally sound.
Right.
And so it seems two different issues. Engineering is for the structural soundness.
Right.
The architect is, how does it look?
Right.
And so I don't see how the engineer comes into play, really.
And that's right, I like the architect, I just like changing the words to recommends, because it makes it simpler.
That's what I thought we decided at the meeting, but I don't know.
That is what ARB, but it had to go for the planning commission as well.
Oh, and they
Thinking
changed
that
it.
they would just agree, but for
Okay,
some
now-
reason, they
now I got it.
recommended a completely different language,
Now I
which
got
means the same thing, but by throwing engineering in the statement, it just makes it more confusing.
Can we just go back to what we had? for
So I
ARB?
would go, yeah, I mean, the architectural review board's recommendation was to just simply change the wording from required to recommend.
Can we put our design, architect or design professional?
They brought that up, I cannot remember why remember why they said no.
I think it just didn't sound professional enough compared to saying engineer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it covered, if you just say recommends an architect, then you can use a design builder. You don't have, basically it says you don't have to use an architect. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Because I think the point that was made at the ARB meeting is if someone brings a beautiful plan design that meets every single guideline or element of the ARB, but they don't have an architect as it stands right now, they couldn't approve it. And so what we were trying to do is say recommends as opposed to require, and that solves it.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, I think Gary, not to belabor the thing, but I think Gary's actually correct in my mind, because somebody buys a design out of a magazine and brings it to the ARB, they don't have a designer or an architect to communicate with David or with anyone.
Okay.
Where are we? So, I mean, it seems to me they either need an architect or a design professional of some kind. Doesn't necessarily mean he's an engineer, but he needs to be a design professional. He needs to be somebody that's.
So how would y'all like to see it worded?
The reason I like design engineer,
Just
so
further clarify.
I did a building recently and I used a landscape architect to do what the building was going to look like. I've done that several times. They weren't an architect, but they, helped me design what I wanted the facade to look like.
How would you like the sentence to read?
You said design professional, I think.
Design professional, something like that. I mean, I think that's fine. I think it's okay the way you just said it too, but the design professional specifically says it's fine for somebody like a David Lane to do it.
Right. The only question I was, because right, just saying recommends, then it goes on to say an architect. It says, even if you put engineer, whatever, you put design professional in there, and it says licensed in the state of South Carolina. Architect is a licensed profession, design professional.
Yeah, he was the architect from Maryland. He's a great architect, a world-renowned architect. Are we gonna say, no, you gotta be licensed in the state of South Carolina? I don't think so.
That's a good point. You could almost take the licensing out, but.
Yeah. That's gonna be a moving document, I can tell you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like the weather. It's
It
gonna,
moved in the first ARB meeting.
yeah.
In a good way, though.
It's gonna keep changing and evolving.
I think we promised that folks we would be flexible, and that's what we need to do.
Then I guess you could say it requires that an architect and or design professional get rid of license in the state of South Carolina, then it just says design and prepare construction documents for.
Or you could say a licensed architect.
Yeah.
If you wanted.
Yeah.
So say that one more time and then.
License, like,
Get it so moved.
I keep using David Lane's example, he's gonna be licensed.
Yeah.
So then it would read, Pawleys Island Architecture Review Board requires that a licensed architect and or design professional design and prepare.
Require, he said require.
Yep.
You meant recommend, not.
You may recommend. You said require, but you may recommend.
Yes. So recommends.
That's,
So then it would read, Pawleys Island Architecture Review Board recommends that an architect and or design professional design and prepare construction documents for residences to be built on the island.
The word licensed before architect.
Yes, you're correct. A lot of changes.
I make a motion that we approve that language.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, thoughts, additions, new words, modifications? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Awesome. All right, we have, the next item is an executive session. We have some comments by council members after an adjournment. But before we can go to executive session, which is to discuss legal advice or other matters covered by attorney-client privilege, we'll need a motion to do so.
I'll make that motion.
Second. A motion is second in discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We'll move into executive session and come back and close out the meeting. Crowd leaves. Please keep the noise down on your way out, everybody.
Don't make too much noise as you walk out the door.
Yes, I think we can, actually. We can close the door.
About the full ones?
We'll keep it.
Keep the door, the brick out the door.
Brian, I know, I'm sure you did, but that's off, right? It is. It is now.